South Carolina just became ground zero in the battle for America's future. Attorney General Alan Wilson, a combat veteran, still serving as a colonel in the National Guard, dropped a political bombshell that's sending shockwaves through the establishment. In an exclusive interview with yours truly, he revealed the brutal price that he has paid for standing with President Trump. 32 complaints, $100,000, 4.5 years of legal warfare. But that's not why he's making headlines today. What he told me about his plans as governor, about unleashing the Guard, about the real meaning of the Department of War, it changes everything. The sanctuary state crowd better buckle up and stay locked in. Now imagine an opportunity that could grow your wealth while also strengthening your country's future. That is the vision behind Western Star Resources. Western Star Resources is an experienced, publicly traded gold and silver exploration company with a proven track record in advancing high-potential projects. The company combines deep geological expertise with modern exploration techniques to unlock value in some of North America's most prospective mineral regions. With domestic demand for precious metals continuing to rise and with the U.S. government backing stronger domestic exploration, Western Star Resources is positioned for the next stage of growth. The company is advancing active projects in Canada and is actively evaluating opportunities in the United States. So could a huge U.S. expansion be on the cards? Well, I wouldn't bet against them or that plan. Western Star Resources, making gold and silver great again. Check them out in the link in the description, westernstarresources.com. Now, we did this interview while I was in South Carolina. I was receiving an award by the North and South Carolina community, the Cambodian community. The Attorney General was there. He was also, he delivered some remarks. I was welcomed by the South Carolina and the North Carolina Cambodian community like a returning war hero for the reporting that we have done on the Cambodia-Thailand crisis. And it was just an honor to be there in that moment. And then, of course, to have this moment with the Attorney General. Watch.
What's up, everybody? Gary Franchi here, Next News Network. I'm in South Carolina, and you're not going to believe who's sitting next to me. I'm sitting next to the Attorney General for the state, and guess what? He's running for governor. He's just announced, and we're going to talk about some of the policies. We're going to talk about some of the events that are happening nationwide. As you know, President Trump just renamed the Department of Defense now as the War Department. And you're a veteran. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
You're a veteran, and you've thrown your hat in the race. Big news is happening all over the country. What's your immediate reaction to the renaming? This is George Washington's original vision.
That's right.
And you're a veteran.
Well, honestly, this is what we lived under for 150 years. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it wasn't until around World War II that we changed the moniker of the Department of Defense. But as a 29-year veteran, having served a combat tour in Iraq, and I'm still serving. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, wow.
But in addition to my day job, I'm still serving in the National Guard. Wow. It's something I'm really honored to be doing. I'm a colonel. And, honestly, I'm really proud of the job that President Trump is doing to elevate national security and actually returning integrity back to the Department of Defense is something that I'm really excited about. When I talk to soldiers and service members alike all over the country, they all have the same opinion.
Well, that was a temperature right now in the armed forces. During the Biden administration, it just felt really demoralized. We saw, drag queen story hours taking place on military bases, and now with the Secretary of War, Hegseth, really restoring the warrior ethos to that department and making that dramatic name change. It really, in my opinion, we're playing offense now.
No, absolutely. And when you think about what is the mission of the U.S. military, it's to win the nation's wars.
Sure.
It is not a laboratory for social experimentation. It is not a place where you try out the latest, greatest woke policy. It's where you train men and women to fight and win the nation's wars, to defend our way of life, which is under attack, not just abroad, but even within the United States of America. So honestly, renaming the Department of Defense, the War Department, actually takes us back to its original core function.
Paul Revere, he put two lanterns in the tower, and one if by land, two if by sea, and clearly, there are enemies of America on our soil today. And it's like we have to raise a lantern and wake up the American people. President Trump's doing that. You're doing that. You mentioned that you're in the Guard currently, and there's a lot of discussion right now, especially with what's going on in Chicago. President Trump yesterday, he reposted a meme that I had created, and then it created quite a stir. And now Great Lakes Naval Station is going to be a staging ground for this cleanup. Now, of course, the Democrats are freaking out because of the analogy with the Department of War and the Apocalypse Now theme. But of course, it's imagery. It's not intended to make an actual declaration of war. But with that reality of President Trump putting the Guard in Chicago like he did in Los Angeles, like he did in Washington, D.C., and you soon to hold, hopefully, the governor's office. You have that ability to dispatch your Guard. How would your Guard supplement the president's actions, whether it's at the border, whether it's in Los Angeles, whether it's in D.C. or Chicago? How does that function? How does that work? And is that something you'd support?
Absolutely, I would support it. Obviously, there are lawful ways to do it. Obviously, the U.S. military, the Army, is not a military police force, and you don't want it to be perceived as such. But there are ways that the U.S. Military, especially the National Guard and the Reserve, but especially the National Guard, can be used to provide support to the policing of the southern border, as well as to securing and promoting peace and protecting federal property and federal employees who are performing federal law or enforcing federal laws. So I would do everything that I could to support the president's border mission, obviously to support the president and his agenda for using our assets and our resources at the state level. The governor is the commander-in-chief of the National Guard, and the governor has the ability to deploy the National Guard in support of these missions, and there are legal mechanisms for doing that. And so I would absolutely pursue every one of those to support the president.
So how does that work then? Do you just call up the president and say, hey, I've got my guys here, we're ready, or does he call you and say, hey, I need you? And then, of course, there's the question of posse comitatus and you know, the policing element that you brought up. How does that whole function work?
Well, first off, you know, as the governor is the commander-in-chief, and posse comitatus only applies to federalized forces on Title 10. In the National Guard, when the governor is the commander-in-chief, you're under Title 32, which is under state control. So Title 32 forces can actually perform backup support to operations that have a law enforcement component to it. So
really?
You're not,
wow.
Yeah, so you're not, and obviously the funding depends on where the funding comes from, but I mean, we're doing border missions right now, and have done border missions over the last several years. But again, posse comitatus would only apply to the federalized U.S. military. You don't ever want the U.S. military to act like a police force. That is what that is addressed to. But in Title 32 status, when people go drill on the weekends, they're not federalized. Their commander-in-chief is not the president, it's the governor. The governor can support the president when they're in Title 32 status, and they can send them down on state active duty, which obviously be funded by the states, but obviously the Secretary of War could, you know, obviously help pay for that too.
Does the president have the power to federalize the state guard and conscript them to a federal role?
Yeah, yes. I mean, up to a point, obviously, the Congress has to declare acts of war, but the president, for a period of time, can actually.
So it's a temporary situation. Do you think that we're reaching an emergency situation in this country where the president could invoke national emergency executive orders with respect to the crime problems that a lot of these major cities are seeing now?
Well, obviously, you know, we just had a recent court case where, you know, the Fifth Circuit disagreed with the president's interpretation of the Alien Enemies Act. I believe that judges should not be second-guessing the commander-in-chief on issues involving the invasion or predatory incursions into the U.S., as this court did. I believe that will be appealed to the Supreme Court. I will be supporting that lawsuit. But a predatory incursion is not an active conventional war. It's not uniformed forces attacking the U.S. It's people operating in what we call military gray zone warfare. It's not outward and overt, but it's how other governments can use, like, say, violent gangs like Tren de Aragua, which is a Venezuelan gang stood up by the government, by Maduro's regime. And the whole point is to destabilize in the interior of the U.S. And so that, to me, that is by definition a predatory incursion. And I think the president should have the authority under that particular.
Well, and he's doing that now. He has the He has the fleet off of the coast of Venezuela. They just took out that drug boat.
That's right.
So he's taking very aggressive actions with respect to that, and they're sending down fighter jets to Puerto Rico after Venezuela just buzzed some of our ships. He's not playing games. Let's talk about South Carolina now, because the people here are going to have an opportunity to vote for you, and election integrity is one of the most important things that we can have in this country.
Absolutely.
We saw what happened in 2020. We saw an election ripped from our hands. And then, of course, the moment you question what happened is the moment you get attacked. So with respect to election integrity in the state of South Carolina, what can you do to ensure safe elections, and what was your experience following the 2020 election?
Well, first off, in the wake of the 2020 election and in the days following January 6th, I was obviously supportive of the lawsuit regarding the constitutionality of how some of the states were violating the Constitution and how they were implementing their state election laws. I joined in a small group of states to raise that issue to the Supreme Court. In the days following January 6th, I had 32 complaints filed against me by Democratic groups and operatives trying to take my law license from me because I was trying to support the integrity of that election. Those attacks on me lasted over 4.5 years. They were all dismissed this past summer, but it cost me about $100,000 to defend my law license and my livelihood because I decided to stand up and support the president and support election integrity. It's easy to support President Trump and support these efforts when no one's attacking you, when everyone in the room with you is agreeing with you. But step outside that comfort zone and lay your livelihood on the ground. That's what I did. I laid it on the line.
I mean, you experienced your own form of lawfare following 2020. I mean, we saw what happened with President Trump, and then, of course, all the phony charges they put against him, everything getting thrown out. But you had your own lawfare happening in this state. How many?
32 complaints.
32 complaints, and you have to go ahead and battle every single one of them, which takes money, time, energy.
Even though they're frivolous, you still have to go contest them and defend yourself, and that costs money. You're right.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So when let's talk about the emotional strain that takes place when you're going through those moments. You're right. I mean, we knew that that election was taken from us, and I think in hindsight, it was actually. I'm glad they did, because President Trump had an opportunity to really stage out the long game here, and now we're having a really wonderful second run of the Trump administration. But during those moments, when we saw President Trump, he had to go to New York and he had to get the mug shots, and he had to take, he went out there and stood there and took the bullets. I mean, quite literally in Butler, he did. But how do you and your family absorb that kind of attack when you know you are right?
Well, honestly, my wife didn't know about it for the 4 years. I told her about it after they were all dismissed this summer. She learned about it. She actually learned about it when I was giving a speech at a big Republican gala about a month and a half ago. And she goes, "Why didn't you tell me this?" I'm like, "Because I didn't want you to have to worry about it. That's for me to do." So I have 2 teenage kids. They didn't know about it. My wife didn't know about it. It was something that I did, that I defended. We came out on top and were ultimately vindicated. But again, doing the right thing is always going to have a risk associated with it. Yeah. And to everyone out there watching this interview, understand that when you do the right thing, you're going to be attacked. But people don't attack you when you're irrelevant. It's only when you're relevant you get attacked.
When you're over the target.
That's right.
Clearly you're over the target right now, and,
yes,
you emerge victorious. Well, it's been an honor to sit here with you and talk with you. How can the folks at home watching this, how can they support your campaign if they want to do so?
Absolutely. If you want to go to wilsonforsc.com, and that's Wilson, F-O-R, not F-O-U, F-O-R-S-C, Wilson, F-O-R-S-C. .com, and that you can learn about my campaign. You can donate, contribute, you can join a coalition, you can obviously learn more about us. Anything you can do would be very much appreciated. Again, we're going to continue to take this fight out there, and not just here in South Carolina, but a coalition of conservative law and order governors can stand together supporting the president. We can make America great again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you got value from that interview, hit subscribe. It's time for my final thought. Now, this is not just another political announcement, folks. Alan Wilson represents a new breed of Republican leadership, combat tested, legally battle hardened, and ready to work hand in glove with President Trump's restoration of American strength. When a man endures 32 lawfare attacks and emerges victorious, you're not looking at a politician, you're looking at a warrior. Now, I met him. I sat down with him. He is the real deal. I didn't feel like I was talking to a stuffy politician with scripted lines. He was the real deal. When he was with me, he didn't even have his political staff with him. He was approachable and 100% genuine. And that's why I support his campaign, and I look forward to going to his inauguration. Now, his promise to deploy South Carolina's Guard wherever Trump needs them, the border, sanctuary cities, crime-infested hellholes, that's not campaign rhetoric. That's a colonel who understands chain of command and constitutional duty. The left tried to destroy him for defending election integrity. They failed. Now he's coming for the governor's mansion, and sanctuary policies in South Carolina are living on borrowed time. So here's my question. Should states that refuse to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement lose all federal funding? Drop a yes or no in the comments. Let's continue the conversation. And while you're fired up, make sure you check out our Next News merch shop. It's linked down below where you can wear your patriotism proudly.